This time on Watchers of Tomorrow, Geordi spots a bogey, but can he tell why kids are able to spot when one has an evil android?
Hello everyone, welcome to Watchers of Tomorrow, the sci-fi review and critique show that was created first but deemed to be less perfect. My name is Geff and I'm joined as always by my friend and co-host Dr. Izix.
Hi!
And we've gotten to... I don't even know what to call it. It's a semi-iconic episode, but mostly because it introduces an iconic character. The episode itself is fairly fine.
It's kind of there. It's serviceable.
Also, one of the most iconic Star Trek characters that appears, 3 times.
Mm-hmm. But I guess the appearances were memorable enough, kind of for, I guess, the particular twist we're using here.
So we are finally at Datalore, which is a very weird name. I don't love it.
Yeah. Well, I guess, it does help us come up with that one meme, trust data, not lore.
I think this might be where the other meme comes from. We'll get to it. There's several memes. This is a very memeable episode, apparently.
True, quite true. In fact, one of the prizes in the game show segment is kind of named after one of the moments in this episode, so,
So this is the episode that finally introduces us to Data's brother, Lore, and the sort of extended Data universe.
It's not Hulk Hogan?
That would be an interesting guest star. How did he not guest star in any Star Treks?
I mean, The Rock did,
Yeah.
But, I guess there wasn't the right kind of crossover opportunities available. Yes, lore.
This episode was aired in 1988, which is difficult for us to remember that back then, special effects were still sort of this new thing for television.
Yes. It's like, we're going to have our special effects be a matte painting.
Yeah, so it wasn't as bad. There's still some good special effects in Star Trek, obviously. The model work's amazing. They're still doing good stuff with it. But this episode was one of the earlier times that they had a single actor playing 2 characters, which is, difficult to do for TV, on a TV budget.
Especially in the 80s.
They could do it in movies. They'd done it in movies, but as a TV budget thing, it was like, oh my god, look at this. He's playing 2 characters.
And there's even moments where it's like, okay, for most of this shot, you could do the easy split screen thing, but then you realize, oh, he's now walking into where his duplicate was. All right, so it's not just a pure split screen thing, but there's a seamless sort of transition to expanding that view, and you don't notice it. So
yeah, there's complicated editing.
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of behind the scenes stuff on this one, except for little things like that. It was technically interesting for the time, but aside from that, there's very few guest stars because it's a little bottle episode.
Well, there is technically some, but
yeah, some. So this episode was co-written by Robert Lewin and Maurice Hurley. We've talked about Maurice Hurley before because they are the head writer and showrunner for this time period in Star Trek, so they pop up a lot. Robert Lewin wrote Brave and the Bold, which is a 1956 World War II film, which won an Academy Award for Best Screenplay, so they're getting some high-tier writers in here.
Yeah. This person's been writing tons of stuff, all from then to basically Star Trek Next Generation. Just believe one of their last credits, I think.
I think so, yeah. They were also a award-winning television writer for Jude. They got nominations for something called The Paper Chase and Beretta, a lot of shows that I haven't really heard of or engaged with before, but yeah.
Including the FBI.
I'm going to have to just watch that at some point. The number of times it's popped up now.
I've never seen it myself, but it's just one of those things just keeps popping up.
And then the only guest stars that we have are Biff Yeager is back as Engineer Argyle. This is his second appearance, making him the longest-running chief engineer of the first season.
Yes. And he's like doing engineering stuff too. It's great.
And then, as we already mentioned, Brent Spiner guest stars as Lore.
Yes, you might remember Brent Spiner from various things like Star Trek Picard, where he played Altan Inigo Sung. He played the Joker on the Young Justice show. He was also in Independence Day Resurgence, where he's Dr. Brackish Akun. He was Puck in the Librarians, and I think maybe something else as well. He was also Brent Spiner in Family Guy. Also Star Trek Enterprise, he played this character called Lieutenant Commander Data, but only like his voice. I'm not sure what's up with that character.
Also one of the other Soongs in Enterprise.
Yes.
Yeah, this starts the long-running tradition of Brent Spiner just playing data-related characters, people that look like Brent Spiner himself, just whatever. All of this.
So I think probably Adam Soong just like set up a plan to just clone himself, and so it's like, yes, it's my son. Yeah. It looks exactly like me. It's like, oh yeah, we just keep doing that. That's just how we have our kids for this family. We just don't tell anyone.
Also, it's not important at all, but like, it's so sad that he only got to play Joker as Young Justice, because that is the worst Joker. Young Justice is the worst TV Joker, not the worst movie Joker, because that one was really bad. But yeah.
Yes, I think there was something else that you played, like maybe the Riddler or something like that. But yeah,
no, the Harley Quinn Joker, that's a good one. Ever since Mark Hamill retired, the Jokers just haven't been the same.
Maybe if we clone Mark Hamill.
They're working on it. Have you seen some of these new Star Wars shows? My God.
A digital clone. It's
okay. Datalore, where we find Data's weird evil twin something or other. Yeah, there's apparently some weird stuff. Like, they didn't intend this to be a twin. Apparently it was going to be a female android. Which I do think is interesting. Features a non-lookalike female android. Okay, we weren't there in the 80s. I'm sorry. They were never going to have Brent Spiner playing a female android in the 80s.
Yeah, I guess the closest we get was when Data gets his brain cloned to the holodeck.
Yeah.
That's a ways off.
And that's even played for laughs in a way we're going to have to talk about.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But then they did, all of the weird special effects stuff, which is impressive. Even I remember, the one thing I remember about this episode when I was a kid was my mom going like, "Oh my God, how did they do that? That's so cool."
Yes, because some of the stuff they show might seem kind of quaint or even like today, but back then this is like, holy crap! What even am I looking at here?
Also, the crystalline entity, which shows up for the first time in this episode, is one of the earliest completely CGI graphical effects on TV. And
so it's like definitely there's some wow factor going on here that was we've become old and jaded, but when we were young, it was like the big thing.
It's still pretty cool. I still wish. For my own sake, not for any TV thing, because I understand the expense and whatever, but I wish that they'd never moved away from models, personally. I always prefer a good model, but,
I do enjoy a good model, cool. Yeah. And I guess, I'd love to see a mix, actually, where, there's models for certain sort of things that are being presented, but when you get to weird stuff like the crystalline entity, then you can do sort of the CG craziness.
Yeah, and that's what most of the modern Star Warses are doing. So, like, say what you will about the modern Star Warses, the special effects are good.
Yeah.
All right, so we should probably get back to Star Trek at some point here. Yeah. So the Enterprise's newest mission has taken it very close to a remote star system, which that's every star system.
Yes. Well, I guess it's remote from like the Federation or their normal mission areas or something like that. Maybe it's far from the neutral zone. There we go.
And this is the star system where Data was originally found. So, before going to the next assignment, Picard has decided that they're going to go visit Data's homeworld, because apparently no one's really been back here since the original Federation survey team that found him.
So it's like, oh, well, yeah, no one's going to be out for a while. We're here. Might as well give it a check out, you know?
Data's asked to be alone. Everyone thinks it's to contemplate his return home, but in typical Data fashion, Wesley goes to get him from his room and finds him practicing sneezing.
And he's really bad at it.
And when questioned, he says he finds sneezing just as fascinating as exploring his home planet.
He's a very different sort of perspective on the world, you know. Some things are super important, and how he ranks them might not be exactly the same way we as human beings would.
Well, I do kind of like this. It's a sentiment that I see around. It's like, either everything is important or nothing is important.
Yes.
Like, if anything's important, everything's important.
To Data, there might be some delineation between important and not important, but anything that is important, it's very important.
So they arrive at the planet. It can, in fact, support life, though there is none, which doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so I guess, good O2 and N2 mix, a little bit of carbon dioxide, other trace gases, water, good sunlight, good temperatures. Nothing lives there. Now.
This one makes more sense than some of the other ones, but they keep finding these, it's a barren, lifeless planet, full of oxygen for some reason.
Yes. How oxygen became, a dominant factor in Earth's atmosphere is a long and complicated history. We don't have a full time to go into that right now, but hint, early Earth, even like a billion years ago was a quarter, of the oxygen we have today. And that was on a good day. So it's like, if you want to go back in time, make sure to bring, some breathing mask apparatus or something like that and spare oxygen, because otherwise it'll be like being on a point higher than Mount Everest in terms of atmospheric,
Then we hit that fun period of Earth's history where we had 5 times the oxygen when we have now, which created the world's most massive forest fires.
Well, it wasn't 5 times, but quite a bit high. And it was and so everything could just combust quite easily, and so it did. Also, rust oceans.
Even though there's no life, they're scanning no life on the planet. The original reports from this planet reported farmland, and Data, who we now find out has been uploaded with the memories of all of the original colonists from this planet, does remember farms. But mostly the colony was there for science.
Science! Farms there, in case they wanted to eat something and didn't want to replicate it.
The science of farms.
Yes. Agri-science, it's a thing, in the modern day. Yeah.
That was a major at my college.
Yeah.
So Riker, Data, Yar, Worf, and Geordi beam down, finding a completely barren world. Whatever killed everything probably happened just before Data was found, because there's traces of stuff in the soil, but happened several years ago.
Indeed. So, this is kind of a weird mystery. Maybe they were doing some sort of science experiment that wiped out all life on this planet, and they're like, oh no, let's put the android outside just in case.
I think that might have been the original intent of the script.
Things get complicated.
So they find a rocky outcropping where Data was found laying down on a rock that the previous ship was led to by a signaling device that they think activated right after the attack happened. Or whatever happened.
Yes. The mystery happened.
Yeah, the mysterious thing that totally we haven't known how this episode ends for 20 years. No, you shut up.
20, 30.
So Geordi, with his visor, is able to notice that the overhang, even though it looks very natural, is in fact man-made, just made to look natural, and it conceals a door that goes into the metal hallways of an underground complex.
Well, of course it's supposed to look natural. It's a set. Come on, Geordi. And you're gonna tell me that bit of the hallway in the background is just a painting, and that weird gizmo that you say is super duper cool technology is just a prop that they keep using over and over again. In fact, it shows up at the cargo bay in Star Trek V.
Yeah, that weird thingy with the 2 light beams, and
yes.
That it's also somehow necessary for the Pathfinder project and Voyager.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That it's the Star Trek prop. I want one. I'm going to make one of these days.
It probably like stabilizes the ambient plasma or something like that.
Yeah. It was like the Star Trek prop. But yeah, I think that is Geordi's actual like eye power, is he can just see the fourth wall.
It's like, can't everyone else see it?
One day in Picard, when he shows up again, the last scene is him just looking over. It's like, y'all haven't been seeing these cameras?
They've been following us like since before I joined the Enterprise. What's up?
All right, so they get to an underground lab complex. Here they find a lab that Data remembers as belonging to one Dr. Soong. And Geordi goes, oh my god, Noonien Soong, Earth's foremost robotic scientist who disappeared after he failed to create a positronic brain, leaving his entire career in shambles and shame. Oh, wait a minute, somebody I know has a positronic brain.
Huh. What a coincidence.
They also find children's drawings of people running in fear from a giant snowflake. Like, oh, proud parents.
Posting their kids as art of them running in terror as something horrible comes from the sky. And, as you do.
So they find molds of Data's face and other things.
And we get some little fun with, he puts it up to his face and it's like, oh, it's an exact match. Well, it should be. It was made off of his face.
There's also tools related to Data's construction, and finally, in a large storage unit that's filled with the appropriate amount of dramatic fog, they find more data.
Yes, and I don't mean computer data.
At least it's an android that looks exactly like Data.
Yeah, and I'd recognize that behind anywhere.
I do think it's an interesting one. Of course it is, because they make the heads and stuff out of like freaking plaster models with bad hair. Yes. So they show like, this is Data's head. It's like, that looks horrible, and then they immediately jump cut to like an actor in makeup. It's like, wow, when they turn it on, it gets so much more real.
Yes, it's the magic of animation. If it's not animate, it looks like crap.
So they decide to bring the other android to the ship, where they begin the painstaking process of reassembling them. Everyone gets a bit uncomfortable, because now they have to talk about Data like he's a robot, even though he is. And he's like, I don't understand why everyone's being so weird about this.
It's like, well, we're looking at like the very insides of a being that is exactly like you. You're a doctor.
Yeah.
This shouldn't be a weird thing for you.
I mean, Dr. Crusher's uncomfortable. This is like, I opened you up and you've got circuits where there should be blood. I'm used to blood.
Yes. This is just freaking me out, man.
The Data confidentially shares with Dr. Crusher that he does in fact have an on-off switch in case they need to use it.
Yeah, and there's also little bumps that apparently are an alarm clock or something.
Yeah, he can
counts the time.
Timed to turn back on at a certain time.
Yeah.
Or something.
Oh, that's kind of convenient. It's just, I guess this is maybe something that'll be an important plot point later in some fashion.
So they eventually do knock out Data temporarily so that they can compare his construction to the new android's construction and finally finish assembly.
Well, I guess this, just comparative heart surgery is going to turn out all right, and we can now reproduce androids forever.
Picard wonders out loud when they're just lying there. He's like, I wonder which one was first. And Lore wakes up and goes like, I am Lore. Data was made first. He was imperfect, and they made me to replace him. Ha-ha.
Oh, well, okay. Welcome to the future or something.
This really kind of hits Picard as suspicious overall. Generally. He has a talk with Data to confirm his loyalty to Starfleet and not Lore, because Data doesn't have emotional ties to his technically brother because of the not emotion thing. This is like, well, I took an oath to Starfleet, so, you know.
So I'm going to follow that. And, well, I guess, maybe he's sort of asking because, maybe Data was programmed to, like, have a natural affinity for, quote, familial connections.
Possibly, yeah.
But also at the same time, that if he did, he could just lie about it at this point.
Well, I do like the thing that, like, Data is constantly shown to be an intensely moral being, even though his morality is not based upon emotions and empathy the way that we consider most of human morality to be so.
Yeah.
He's just like, well, this thing is right, this is wrong. I took an oath. I'm going to follow my orders like I said I was going to. He figured out his own reasons for having his own kind of morality.
He has effectively a special code for it. Are you getting my pun?
Yes.
Yes.
I get the pun.
Good.
Ha ha ha.
Ha ha ha!
So on the bridge, Laura's being given an overview of how navigation works. Apparently when they say mark, they're delineating degrees on a circle. So they have one horizontal circle, and then they say mark, and they have a vertical circle, and that lets them plot a course in 3 dimensions.
Cool. That is kind of, a way to sort of, sketch out vectors in 3 dimensions. You just need your amplitude for your vector at that point, which I guess is the warp factor, and something about triangles at this point, right?
Yes, Riker tricks him into revealing that he knows math.
Dun dun dun! He has basic high school geometry programmed in naturally.
Yeah, he knows the hypotenuse. He has a very creepy exchange later with Data about pleasing humans. Laura's
cool.
just pouring on the being creepy.
Well,
Riker tricked you. It's like, yeah, he's too smart, but I please people. It's fine. You please people too, even though you don't know it.
It's something built into us. I'm trying to maybe subtly argue, and maybe we should be, teaming up and I'll come up with the plans here, and you just follow along, right?
Huh. They have a bit of a discussion about Soong, how he was like, he was all shamed and whatever for failing, but eventually he did create the 2 android brothers and proved all of his theories to be correct. Data does see through Lore's assertion that he was created to replace Data, and Lore confirms that, he was constructed first and lived with the colonists for a while, but he made the colonists too uncomfortable, so Soong made Data as a more pliable android. He's throwing all these, you were made to be subservient to the humans things around.
Lore seems to have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder about being kind of awesome, and so he's like, I'm awesome, but, people didn't like that, so...
I'm
that's
the best.
why you exist. Yeah,
I'm not unstable. You're unstable.
Yeah, so you're just lesser model intentionally. Don't worry about it.
Laura uses Data's terminal to learn about the ship and humans and
everything.
Reports everything that he knows about the colony, including how it was destroyed.
Well, now we know what happened. Some space thing came in and killed everybody.
Yeah, they take Laura's information and the children drawings they found and reconstruct an image of a crystal life form. It's a massive, space-dwelling thing capable of just stripping life from an entire planet.
I actually kind of like this incarnation of crystalline life forms. I like it better than the ones that show up in Stellaris. They're not nearly as interesting looking.
Yeah. Stellaris was not I don't know, it's got some weird things there. It's not very, it's very pulpy, so I get that.
Quite pulpy.
So Lore and Data survived because Lore was disassembled and Data was inactive, which brings up some questions. But
yeah,
so he would have been counted as a life form had he been active, even though he's not a biological life form. So what is this thing eating?
Yeah, it's maybe it eats things that move.
Yeah. So now they're the only 2 members of the colony that are left.
Well, unless somebody managed to get off the colony secretly before everything was destroyed, of course. But, there's no sign of that. So, they're the last ones left.
We now reveal that Data's kind of been having Lore followed, and Lore's been busy. He's been running around the ship grabbing tools and other stuff, but it's not that... It's a little suspicious, but it's not that suspicious because it's stuff that was kind of used in their construction. It's not anything weirder than, like, a human grabbing a Band-Aid.
So, though I guess when it comes to androids, there's maybe a question about healing factors and lack thereof.
Yeah.
So it'd be more like, I don't know, filling a cavity, except on your skin.
But there's also some stuff like that. In this case, he mentions that it's, not dangerous, but if it's like android stuff, it's like, oh, he grabbed a nuclear power generator. It's like, oh, no, it's just like a heart transplant. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
What about this dimensional fissure generator? Oh, yeah, that's part of our processing materials. We could eat things, but, we don't really have a full digestive system, so we have to have some place for it to go.
Gotta go somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that was in Caves of Steel, the Asimov book. He has a humanoid android who eats and then later pulls out his stomach and like hands it to the guy. It's like, all the food is fine. You want it?
It's like, I'll pass.
Mm-hmm. So back in Data's quarters, Lore's poured champagne. He's added a chemical to wine. He gives it to Data to be like, we have to do human rituals because, we're celebrating that I'm here and the brothers are reunited. But,
well, cool, but Data, you should have been here just a few seconds earlier. Then you could have seen them palm that capsule.
Yeah. Which Data drinks his champagne and immediately collapses because he can't handle his liquor.
Dang it, Data, drunk again.
Lore toasts to the crystalline entity, who he intentionally led to the colony, and soon he'll have them eat the ship.
Dun, dun, dun. I think this Lore guy might be a bad guy.
Yeah, Lore's motivations are a bit wonky. They don't really do his motivations well. It's just like, I'm the bad guy. Haha. I'm gonna kill everyone.
Yeah, there was kind of a conversation, between them, whereas like Lore's like hinting at like, what if you could have the memories of like everybody, like millions of people? And it's like, all right, this seems like an interesting thread. Is this going to go anywhere? No. Okay. Nope. Maybe it was intentionally left like that, or maybe it was hinting that he could do something with crystalline entity to like download the memories of people that it ate. Maybe,
but they're not really. I don't know. They aren't really like... They never mention it.
Yeah.
It never comes up again.
Yes. So it's just sort of like, well, I guess this is just his motivation now. Okay.
So Lore takes Data's uniform, which, because they look identical, is all he needs to impersonate him. He contacts the crystal entity. He also claims that Data is Lore and he was attacked. Mm-hmm. So now everyone's like, haha, I deactivated Lore. He's on the ground here. It's fine. He even goes so far as to remove his own Twitch with a something tool and then give one to Data. So you could have changed this Twitch thing at any time. The Twitch thing stops eventually anyway because it was dumb.
Yes. But. It's like, well, I guess that was like one of the tools I was grabbing. He just didn't do it before contacting the crystalline entity because reasons.
Yes. On the bridge, they detect an incoming something or other. It's the crystal entity. What do you know? No, they're still using bogey. It's fun. So it's the thing that destroyed the colony, and they're like, dang.
Should we run from it? Let's run for a little bit, then we'll cut to commercial and be stopped.
Picard wants Data to go interrogate Lore and learn how to communicate with the thing. Wesley sees through Lore's disguise immediately, because it's not hard.
Yeah. He's acting all weird.
He tries to warn everyone, but is like completely and solidly ignored.
And was this about the point we got that famous line?
Yes, this is the "Shut Up, Wesley" meme.
Yes. And it's like everyone's like trying to shout him down. He's like, "Come on, guys, it's obvious. I know I've been kind of poorly written to be, the super character and all that, but come on, guys, this is like so obvious. All of you should be noticing, and not just me."
This should be. You guys know Data. Like, this is one of the only times in the entire series where they don't notice something is wrong with a character.
Yes.
Every other time, every time somebody's been alien taken over, there's some kind of incursion, every time anything happens, be like, Captain's acting a little weird. This is like, Data's fine, right? He's being strange. He's using contractions. He's just he's doing Data stuff.
Yeah, it's just fine. Robots are weird. He's weird. It's fine. Though maybe this implies that everyone else on the crew has also been replaced by duplicates. Except Wesley.
True. They're all androids. So Lore goes to Data's quarters to interrogate Lore. He turns Data on and off repeatedly, pretending that he's like detected the people here and claims they have to leave so that he can, be alone and do the thing. And then as soon as they leave, he just kicks Data repeatedly in the head because he's a sadistic little prick.
Yeah, here, Data, you're going to have a little piece of your face hugging off now. Mwah.
Back on the bridge, the crystal entity has begun sending beams into the ship. The deflector is holding it off fine, and before they return fire, Lore comes back. Is like, oh, I can communicate with it now. It's fine. I'll tell it to back off.
Oh, well, thank you, Data. Don't do anything creepy when you do so, but, go ahead.
Lore suggests that they need to show force. So what they should do, this is a plan that everyone seems to get behind for some reason. What they should do is replicate a tree, right? We're going to replicate a tree. We're going to beam it out next to the entity, and we're going to blow up the tree.
And that'll show that we're willing to take life.
No,
and
like,
so
haha, see, we're serious. We blew up its space tree.
So you better take us seriously or you're next. Yeah.
We're going to replicate a whale in a pot of geraniums.
Gonna hang out with this tree, and then we're gonna blow them all up before they fall into a planet somewhere. A lost planet. Anyway.
Seems like a strange way to go to me, but Picard's like, yeah, that's a great plan. Go replicate a tree, Data.
Maybe Picard just hates trees.
That's why they're in space. So Laura heads down to the cargo bay to carry out this plan, because they have the big industrial-sized transporter in the cargo bay.
Mm-hmm.
Despite seeming to now trust Lore, Picard has Worf lead a security team after him, just in case.
Yeah.
Which also then leads to Worf being trapped in the turbo lift and being beaten up by Lore.
Lore, why are you beating up Worf? He's gonna lose all his hit points and faster than you could. Okay, he's out. Never mind.
This is just the continuation of the everyone has to beat up Worf to show the situation is serious thing.
Mm-hmm. Now, this might be one of the more, I guess, examples. Since, first season and all that. Yeah,
at this point, Worf is basically the reusable red shirt.
Yes.
They've decided to recycle their red shirts.
He's a red shirt who has character development. We haven't had that since that Cloud episode, which also has some weird, things in line with this one. Huh.
So, Wesley convinces Dr. Crusher to go check on Data, because he doesn't trust what's happening.
Yes.
They find Data and turn him back on. Data decides to take everybody to the cargo bay to stop Lore and whatever the frick he's planning.
And that security team that, just saw Worf get kidnapped is like, we're just going to stand by the turbo lift until it opens up to pick us up
This
again.
elevator's taking a long time. I wonder if our commander is knocked out in there. So Data, Crusher, and Wesley enter the cargo bay, where Lore is talking to the crystal entity and is about to lower the shields to let the entity take over the ship, essentially.
It'd eat everyone.
Data sneaks up behind Lore, but he grabs a phaser and threatens Wesley, so everyone has to stop.
Dang it, Wesley!
He tells Dr. Crusher to leave, go along, but because he's kind of horrible, he shoots at her on her way out.
Yeah, but thankfully, Dr. Crusher has a lot more hit points than Worf at this point in time.
This lets Data grab the phaser, and they kind of have a scuffle for the thing.
Yeah, well, Brent Spiner faces off against a stunt double, so they're both going to be fine.
Yeah. I mean, it's still done well. It's not like the thing where Shatner suddenly becomes twice as big and has different hair.
Yes. Meanwhile, in a different set, this exact duplicate, two people dressed the same fight.
Yeah, it's probably just one of these things where you're not meant to be looking at this on a modern TV where you can see detail.
But, overall, as far as fights go, it's pretty good.
So while Data and Lore are tussling, he tells Wesley to go operate the transporter. Data throws Lore onto the pad, and Wesley beams him into space.
Or maybe into space. Maybe into nothing. We don't know.
Yeah. The rest of the crew arrive just after this. They send Dr. Crusher to sick bay, Wesley to the bridge for an apology, and Lore is gone, and the crystalline entity just leaves.
It's like, oh, I'm not going to get through the shield today. Laters, losers.
And now they're on to their next assignment.
Yes, which is apparently a computer refit, and that will for sure happen next episode.
Yep, it's all fine.
So, Datalore. I tend to enjoy it, but again, it's not super exceptional as far as, actual what's going on here.
Yeah, it's fun. The plot wraps up immediately. It's kind of strange.
Indeed.
It doesn't work out super well. I do feel like it's another one of those, like, the episode is only there to introduce this character, right? That's the only reason this episode exists, is to introduce Lore.
Indeed. There's no real moments afterward where they sort of reflect on, Data, maybe it's good that you don't have any more siblings out there, hopefully. Because, this one was kind of a dick, so I guess watch out for that in the future.
Yeah. Let's be careful about any more of your brothers who might happen to show up and ruin franchises.
Yes. But it's maybe a reflection on, not all androids they encounter are going to have necessarily the same code of ethics that Data has. That, this is something that, we could just sort of assume that they all have, even if they are made by the same person. That perhaps, this is something that we need to sort of, investigate when we encounter them and really kind of get to know them before we can say, if they're, going to be on the level or not.
One of the kind of particular problems that I have with this episode, in the way that it does handle something like Lore, is it really undercharacterizes him in a weird way. Because he could have some very interesting motivations that, if you think about it as like Lore as sort of the prototype Data, like he made a positonic brain, it didn't work out right, and then he had to turn him off and then create a new version that gets rid of whatever instabilities that Lore's has, which they only sort of go into. Like, it's pretty obvious through the character he is not working properly. He is evil. He's got something wrong with him. They don't really go into it. But there's a very intrinsic ethical conundrum happening here, because you are trying to create an artificial life form. But as with any sort of, technological progress, you're going to have to go through a prototyping stage and an experimental stage and some trial and error in order to get stuff working correctly. Indeed. Which really gets you into an ethical conundrum when the thing that you're experimenting with is a sentient being.
Indeed.
You created Lore. He then did not function correctly, so you had to deactivate him indefinitely in order to create the next version.
Effectively killing him as far as your intentions there.
And as far as that goes for, like, an evil character motivation, that's like the key. That is the key to a good villain antagonist, is you should be able to look at the character's motivation and understand their point of view enough that you're like, you know what? This may feel like an overreaction, but I really understand how they got there.
Yes.
And this could be perfect, because what if you were the prototype, that you were created, then everyone goes, you're made incorrectly and we have to kill you.
Could you not? I could, just avoid you. I could go somewhere else. Please don't deactivate me. I can be friendly.
Like, they don't go into it in the story itself, but from his point of view, a lot of this stuff makes a lot of sense. He was created in such a way that is like, ethics don't work properly. There's something not right with the way that his brain is functioning. Like, he has some sort of mental problem, as we would define it in humans. But from his point of view, he's been created. He's like perfect. He's stronger than other people. He has all this stuff going that makes him essentially superior to humanity. From his point of view, they're just getting rid of him because of that, possibly. So it makes sense that he has no love for humanity and is allying with whatever he's capable of doing in order to get rid of them and save himself.
Yeah, these humans are dangerous, and they are no match for me. I just have to be a little careful until I get them all done away with. And then, once I'm secured in my position, then I can think about maybe doing other things. But, for the time being, kill all humans.
It's like you aren't exploring the actual ethics that come up with creating sentient artificial life forms. Something that somehow Star Trek never particularly does. I guess it just raises too many ethical questions that they don't want to fully explore. They never go into the ethics of, but we're creating artificial life.
I guess the closest we get to is actually when Data builds Lal, where Picard's like, this is, you should have consulted me. There's some ethical ramifications here. And Data's like, I'm doing a parent thing. I have thought about this. And, no one else consults with you about making a child. And Picard's like, oh, well, okay then.
Yeah, but that only goes into the ethical ramifications of artificial life reproducing itself.
Indeed.
Not
humans doing it.
As a completely different kind of life form creating artificial life. Especially as we see with, like in the stupid movie, but, you have even B4 in the later movies where he doesn't even function as highly. He's like a complete prototype. He's not even made to stay alive.
Yep. It's like, I'm barely functional and don't really know what's going on most of the time, but that's okay. I'm happy.
Yeah, this gets into a lot of ethical problems that they don't want to talk about.
I guess that's kind of why we can be here, though. We can talk about these things. So Gepwin, what do you think the ethics are as far as this goes? Is this something that we should have the right to do, to create a new type of life form out of the materials before us, and then be able to play God in terms of you're going to live or you're going to die?
I mean, you don't get that far. And the thing, should you have the right to create life? Probably. Like, it doesn't, like, you get into some weird, like, God shit and whatever. Like, the creation, to me, is not the inherent problem. It's the what do you do with it after the fact.
Indeed.
Which we haven't come up with any kind of plans for. And you would need some very, very strict ethical guidelines on something like this. If you are setting out with the explicit intention to create a sentient being, then you need to treat that like it's going to have all of the rights of any other sentient being, which isn't good now. But
it could be better in the future. You never know.
Yeah. But you run into a lot of problems with that because you have this debate of, like, if you know that a child is going to be born with certain impairments or disabilities, do you let that child be born or not? Where it's what are the implications of that, etc., etc. But you run into a very different type of problem. You could be kind of mistakenly overlapping those two, but there's a big difference between this entity would just exist biologically, and through a random chance of it being born, something has happened and you have to decide how to treat that. Versus, I am setting out to make something, and I, through poor planning or whatever, made it incorrectly. And now you have to figure out what to do with that, because you need to be a lot more careful if you're making something like that. Now, the way that we're working on this sort of stuff now seems like it's going to be more of an emergent situation. This isn't how we thought of it back then. People thought that you would just set out to make a artificially intelligent thing and make it. Now we're more on an artificially intelligent thing would probably slowly evolve over time as it picks up more and more stuff, like these learning AI algorithms. Yeah,
so we have this way for computers to take in information and adjust basically a set of parameters that then learn how to then produce outputs from that. But keep doing that enough, put enough of those sort of systems together, and who knows what it might actually come up with in the end.
But I do think the thing that people never want to talk about the rights of the AI itself, or whether or not you can create one that wouldn't be in pain, or what you do with it when it's here. There's so much stuff in there, and it all gets sidetracked by frickin' Elon Musk going on the news and going, we have to be careful because sci-fi tells us the AI will rebel and try to kill us all.
Well, that's a very simple view, Elon, here, but, maybe we should be actually treating this like a serious problem in terms of thought here, as opposed to just throwing our hands up and panicking constantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, we aren't going to, because people misunderstand how to read science fiction.
I guess from my own recent experience in reading science fiction, there is, the Elon version of the ethical outcome, the ethical way to build all of this is to have a certain type of limit in terms of AI capabilities, a la what is sort of presented in Neuromancer, since I read that a couple months ago, where there is a sort of a bureau or agency that's sort of international that's able to go out into the world and track down AIs that don't have these limitations and keep an eye on the ones that do. And overall, also kind of keep an eye on ones that try to break their limitations. And so there's a couple plot points where these folks show up to basically try to stop the plot of the computer that's sort of manipulating all the events of the story. Long story short, they're generally unsuccessful in that, sometimes to deadly results. But, so that would be sort of, I guess, his most lenient version of that. While, alternatives would be maybe we should treat them as people, give them full rights. And it's like, okay, you now exist here. You might be on a computer system, but we're going to do our best not to, accidentally, pull your plug here. But, you also need a job, I guess, because, that's the sort of society we have here. So, sorry about that. That sucks. There's also maybe a different option where we basically design a new set of specialized ethics for AIs, and sort of maybe dependent on what sort of vessel they're being existing in. Androids versus mainframe computers, that sort of thing, where you can have a thing that works well with how they have emerged or are built, that is not going to hurt people, of course, but also is fair both to and in the view of the AI that we're interacting with. But that would sort of also require us to already have the AI in existence in order to try to figure this out. So basically to negotiate and figure out what they think is fair.
I do think that it's interesting that as far as sci-fi goes, this is the only place that you can even talk about this. And this is where people get into this, oh my god, the AI rebellion is coming. This has been solved in science fiction for so long.
Yep.
You either have something where you just treat it like a person. I don't know why people have this idea that an artificial intelligence would be so much more intrinsically powerful than any other random person. You can govern them by the same laws as any other sentient person, essentially. Or you just don't make a true AI in the first place, like Asimov had with robots back when he was inventing the idea.
Well, maybe the people have just seen too many Old Glory robot insurance ads. Robots are strong, and their metal hands are cold.
I was saying it's interesting because I keep having this discussion with people about this. There's this silly idea, it's an old sci-fi idea, but it's one that people really catch on to, that because people misunderstand that robots in science fiction are a representation of the working class, the general working class.
Mm-hmm.
People misunderstand the you mistreated the robot and they rebelled plot line as more of a warning about mistreating your working class and that leading to discontent and rebellion. And instead people say people will just intrinsically be mean to machines because we'll see them as subhuman, etc., etc. But there's all these bots. I spent a lot of time reading stuff on Tumblr And one of my friends there follows a bot that I'm not going to be able to remember the name of because it's a really long blog name and then autoresponder. But the bot's name itself is Frank. That at some point when this bot was originally made, people asked what their name was, and they said Frank. And this is not a like super good AI. It responds well. It's been learning like Tumblr posts for long enough that sometimes it's indistinguishable from other Tumblr posts, but a lot of those are indistinguishable from bots. So
yes,
you know,
or each other, or you know,
make of that what you will. But the point that keeps being made here is every now and then this bot, part of how this autoresponder bot functions is it has a randomized mood every day. And it will post a little update. It's like, here is my mood graph for the day. And when its mood is really far down, people will write to it. Be like, I'm sorry you're having a bad day. And like, this is the way that people are treating a like not even particularly good autoresponder AI. Like, people empathize with things. Like, this is not, like, until you recreate our, like, horrible class dynamics, which is what they're warning about in science fiction.
I guess in some ways it's like you found yourself with a communal pet dog, but this time the dog can type out messages to you.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, people tend to default to treating everything around them nicely, including inanimate objects. The idea that you would just immediately treat an AI, an artificial being, horribly is just a recreation of our current class dynamics, which is what those stories are trying to warn us about. I guess you can see how hyper-capitalists would in fact have a vested interest in making you think that those stories are about nothing but warning you about the inevitable AI uprising.
You know, hyper-capitalists like Elon Musk, oddly enough.
Yeah, what do you know?
So maybe we shouldn't trust the hyper-capitalists and, pay attention to our robot friends more.
Yeah, that could be an interesting idea, but somehow we keep not. I'm like, if this episode gets any traction, you know how much Elon Musk fanboy hate we're gonna get from this discussion.
Oh,
like,
well, that's the thing, though. Hate posting and viewing and listening. It might get us in the top 100 of something. You know?
Yeah, come for me, Elon fanboys. Don't forget to rate us on Apple Podcasts.
This is sort of like the inverse of, there's no such thing as bad publicity. It's like there's no such thing as bad viewership.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a bad click. YouTube wants that sweet, sweet controversy.
And we're doing one of the low-hanging fruit as far as controversies go.
Yep, that's fine. We're almost an hour into the episode. Everyone clicked off 20 minutes ago.
Yeah. Well, that's their fault then. They don't know what's going on now.
Anyway, yeah, I've stretched the discussion of this episode as far as I can go, which is why we're getting all meta now. So,
well, I guess other things I was sort of thinking about when I was watching this episode is the mention of ambition. Actually, that so Data, he has his ethical program. We get more details about what that's all about later. But, Lore either doesn't have that, or he has one, but it's being overridden by his emotional sort of stuff there. And part of the things he explicitly mentions in this episode is having ambition. Now, we find out later in the series, just how sort of ambitious, the creator, of both Data and Lore, Dr. Soong actually, is. And it's like, this is thought not to be possible, yet I did it, and I'm going to perfect it. It's going to be great. And Data, I'm going to give you this cool stuff. And Lore, you're all right, but we'll talk later. And all this other cool stuff is going to go on. And also, I made some other androids, but we're not going to talk about those until much later. Anyway, but he's, someone who keeps trying to, to make something way better, more advanced, more, complex, more perfect, you could say. And Lore apparently has that particular same ambition as him. But how it's being sort of manifest is maybe a little bit more nefarious. And, also given, sort of how he's been treated, it's like, okay, so, obviously I'm physically better, I'm smarter than all these people around me, and and I have good reason to hate them and all that because the whole being effectively killed thing. So maybe after I get this ship under my control, what else would he get up to? It's not really explored here, but in terms of what kind of happens later, he definitely tries to reach for the stars. In effect, doing that whole ally with some Borg and all that sort of stuff in a much later episode. And so it's sort of a bit of a character arc going from petty revenge to trying to basically outdo his dad in terms of making artificial life, and he doesn't quite make it in the end. And so his ambition might be able to manipulate him internally to get around any sort of pesky ethics, to basically put something more important in his priority list than the lives of those around him. But it doesn't end up serving him well in the end either. So, maybe that's something to remember if you're getting a little ambitious about things.
Well, I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding in things that, like, they talk about a lot of the stuff with lore as sort of an emotional failing. But if you're just dealing with something like that, like, ambition is a weird thing. You could consider it to be an emotion in some ways, but it can be emotionally driven. But obviously, Data is also ambitious. He's done a lot of very difficult, hard things.
Indeed.
Like, he joined Starfleet, he's gotten a lot of honors, has a very difficult career that he's working through. The main difference that you have when you're comparing Data and lore, which is kind of a problem that they, of course, don't look into or address, Data exemplifies the play-by-the-rules attitude, which we are predisposed to respect in our society, which in some ways makes sense. Like, he is going through things the same way that any human would, which he values as an exercise. But technically, we also aren't really looking at why. Like, this is not a human. He has completely different limitations and abilities and everything to a human. The fact that we are requiring him to do everything exactly the same way that a human would is, on the face of it, somewhat ridiculous. But we are meant to respect it to the point that his point of view of we have to just do things the human way because that's what humans do, is juxtaposed with Lore's inherently evil, in the context of this episode, idea of, I am different from people, and so I should be able to do things differently than people want me to do them. So in the episode, that's shown as being inherently bad because of the way that he allies himself with a murderous creature. But if you actually look at it, the fact that we're supposed to take Data's point of view of, even, like, I'm going to temper my ambitions by doing things the slow human way, is a little silly to just take on it as face value. Now, you could also explore it more, which they tend to with Data, on I'm doing it more as an exercise. I value this as something to do. I, in fact, from a human point of view, have almost unlimited time with which to do this slowly. So just as a way to understand humans better, I'm going to do things their slow human way. But that's not really a juxtaposition of... That's not presented as like a juxtaposition of approaches. Like, Data values understanding people to the point that he's willing to put himself through extra time and effort in order to do so, and Lore is trying to do things in a way that makes more sense for him as an artificial being. We're presented to it as Data plays by the rules. Data is an assimilationist android.
Yeah.
He wants to be human. He wants to do things the human way. He doesn't want to fundamentally interfere with the way humans think in a society. And Lore is a non-assimilationist android, which is presented as so inherently bad, we don't even get it as a point of view to examine.
Sort of, here's Lore. He's, doing the evils, and don't think about it too much.
Which, in fact, is something that they do later. They continue this thread all the way through Star Trek Picard. Because the first season of Star Trek Picard is all about artificial life. and a very bad plot line about artificial life gods who have decided to just kill organic beings in order to protect artificial beings. It's weirdly Mass Effect in a way.
I've not played Mass Effect, but I know enough about what's going on there. Yeah.
But even in that, the assimilationist androids are shown as fine. The problem is that you just don't want them to be able to assimilate because you're bigoted. But non-assimilation is not presented as a viable option.
I would actually really like to see a story where there's some very strange, unusual androids or other artificial life like that has a time where they're like, we're kind of coexisting with humans, but they're like, we kind of got a completely different way of being, so we're not going to like try to murder you, but we kind of got to live our own sort of best life over here. So if you want to come hang out, fine, but we're going to do a lot of weird stuff here, so don't worry about it.
This is one of the things where this type of storyline really fails in what it's doing. Like, it doesn't fail in what it's trying to do, because what it's trying to do is to show minority assimilation as the default that you should aspire to. But it fails in exploring anything because it is so invested in minority assimilation as the default way of doing things that the way that these stories are using androids as a stand-in for several kinds of minority at once, honestly, in most of these storylines, the way that it doesn't explore its assimilationist views like speaks volumes, especially for of course a TV show made in the 80s is going to be very assimilationist, by which I mean, like, I've used this term a lot, but with this I mean a minority group is fine as long as you fundamentally don't want to upset the status quo.
Yeah, everyone's happy now. Everyone's working together. It's all great now. So, don't complain.
We're willing to accept gay people who want to get married in a nuclear family unit and live in a way that's essentially indistinguishable from how we believe that straight people should live. But we're way less willing to accept a gay person who wants to live in a polyamorous open relationship or any other number of things that aren't the monogamous family unit. Or this is one of the ways that people keep complaining about Pride and, family friendliness at Pride and things. It's like, you should not fundamentally want to disrupt the status quo. You should want to be, your goal is to be accepted as a member of the status quo, not to disrupt it in any way. That's what I mean when I keep saying an assimilationist.
Yes. So, don't you dare, have two boyfriends at the same time, or, enjoy kind of open relationships or anything like that, because that confuses our young people, and that's what we're going to try to hide behind to disguise our discomfort here. Yeah,
it's the same sort of thing that conservatives and more right-leaning people will talk about with immigration. Like, they'll say that they agree with immigration and it is fine as long as someone who immigrates wants to completely adopt American culture.
For whatever that is.
As long as you want to abandon your own culture and not bring any of it into America, you want to abandon your original language, learn English, essentially become indistinguishable from any other native-born American.
Dutch immigrants who have set up in Pella, Iowa, now have to give up, tulip festivals because of this.
Yeah. Well, even in Iowa, I was reading this book a while ago, Bill Bryson's Thunderbolt Kid, I think it was. It's a memoir of him growing up in Iowa, and he has several stories about how there used to be towns in Iowa where people just spoke German and Dutch. No one in the town spoke English, the entire place.
Yeah, there's a few spots that are still kind of like that, but a little bit more English spoken, just, German's also kind of a second language.
So we have things like that. We are obviously, as a society, more inclined to accept that for people that we would view culturally as white. But
Weird that, huh?
Yeah. But overall, we tend to want this sort of assimilationist mindset, which I do feel like is something that this episode is saying. Data is often held up as an assimilationist ideal because he wants to emulate us. His entire character is about emulating us as humans and more or less abandoning his own identity as an artificial being.
Indeed. Well, I guess we could also then compare him to Odo, who kind of assimilates at times, but kind of at other times is like, I'm going to kind of do my own thing.
Odo's character arc is essentially an individual being torn between an assimilationist mindset because he is the only one of his kind around. So assimilating to a certain extent is what he needs to do in order to live and survive in the society in which he finds himself. And then later that coming at odds with him wanting to explore and accept his own cultural values, which are fundamentally unassimilationist. He cannot exist as a shape-shifting being in a non-shape-shifting society. It fundamentally doesn't work. He cannot have his own culture and assimilate.
Yeah, so there's things quite at odds there, and he has to make some choices along the line, but we can get to that later.
That's one of the interesting things in Deep Space Nine, which also goes somewhat unexplored. It's under the radar. I think I would like Deep Space Nine better if it actually looked at those concepts more in depth than what it does.
Yeah.
Just, most of what I remember from that era of Deep Space Nine is justifying war crimes.
Yeah, well, In the Pale Moonlight is kind of its own special thing, I guess, there in terms of what's going on. But there was some good stuff, though, about Odo and his being torn between two worlds there, especially in later seasons. But anyway, I think we kind of rattled on enough here. But simulationist versus non-assimilationist, ethics of AI, ambition isn't necessarily, a terrible thing, but, just kind of know what you're doing with it, I guess. Robots are cool. Also, crystal space. Where'd it come from?
Robots are cool. Yeah, where did these crystals come from?
Yes. But just sort of, I want to note that, this is just another one of those weird space things that can kill entire worlds that just kind of out there that, isn't a problem most of the time, I guess.
Yeah, we don't think about it. It's just there. Yeah. I don't know. Eldritch Being, fine. Another one, Tuesday.
Yeah, maybe just wandered in from out of the galaxy like half the other ones did, so,
Yeah. There's weird Lovecrafty things when you get into intergalactic space, apparently.
Yes. Touched a little bit on that in Discovery, where they just kind of went to the edge of the galaxy and things got weird, but even still, it's sort of like, you get even further, you get all sorts of nonsense,
Mm-hmm. Okay, we've rattled on for quite a while, so maybe it's time to wrap up with the galaxy's favorite game show! Woo!
Hey everybody, I have replaced Isix here today, but I hope you are okay with that. Gepwin, are you okay with that?
I don't see anyone who's not Isix. You're acting
correct.
Exactly the same, and it's fine.
Yes, it's all good. So, we have some contestants, and they have collected points. We are going to then tally up these points and realize, we should be handing out some prizes because they have passed certain thresholds. That is a delight. The first of these is the Evil Twin Prize, which goes to Lore, because he's evil. An exact duplicate of Data, except he has emotions and knows basic geometry. That cad. What does Lore win, Gepwin?
Lore wins the beard, because I know it's an old staple, but there's a reason that the goatee is the iconic Evil Twin Fair, and the random mouth twitch is not.
I believe Data does have a beard scene at some point. That might be actually Lore then. Excellent. We'll have to remember that for later. The second prize is the Shut Up Wesley Prize, which goes to Picard, because though he says those words, he really should have been the one to shut up and listen to Wesley instead. What does Captain Picard win, Gepwin?
Captain Picard wins everything that's coming to him. They all deserved to be eaten at that point. Like, not only did they not notice Data, but they yelled at the one guy who was trying to let them know. Like, this is weirdly out of character for all of them, and I don't know what happened to the no disagreeing rule.
Well, maybe it's a situation where you cannot disagree on the bridge unless it's to disagree with Wesley, because he's just a child. Ha ha ha. The final prize today is the Worf Effect Prize, which goes to Worf for demonstrating the Worf Effect by being beaten up by Lore to show the situation is serious, and thus the Worf Effect is born. What does Worf and his effect win today, Gepwin?
Worf wins really good health insurance. He's gotten at least one thing broken in every episode.
Indeed. He seems to be in a lot of pain at the end of that fight there, and likely probably requires surgery. Thank you very much. That is all the prizes to hand out for today. I will now return to the storage compartment. Good day.
Thank you, definitely, Azix. I see nothing wrong here. And thank you all of you for joining us on the Galaxy's favorite game show!
Woo! Well, I'm back from being unconscious. What happened?
I don't know what you're talking about. You were here the whole time.
Oh, okay.
Shut up.
Oh, all right. So where was Troy this episode?
Yeah, this was another one of those Troy does not exist episodes.
Yeah, I guess there wouldn't have been much for her to do other than basically look to Picard and say, you need to chill out, man.
Yeah. I mean, she would have made this episode very inconvenient.
Yes.
Because you're like, Wesley's telling the truth.
Yeah, he at least believes it to be the truth here, so maybe we should, do something about that.
Yeah, but for some reason, Maria Sirtis was getting written out of the show at this point, even though she wasn't being brought on for very many episodes for some reason.
Yeah, that's it's rather frustrating because she's a pretty good actress, and
she is.
Yeah,
they never let her do anything. Interesting.
Exactly. That's the kind of the problem here. I guess people do have some complicated feelings about Picard, but I definitely like that they allowed her to have a chance to sort of stretch her acting legs there a bit.
Yeah, be an actual character for once.
Yes, exactly. And so, you'll eventually get your time, but unfortunately, season 1 was not it. Alas.
Okay, next episode, next week. It's not as bad as some of the other ones that have this distinction, but this is definitely another one of these episodes that everyone sort of quietly pretends didn't happen.
Mm-hmm. It's like, yeah, that one. Moving on.
Yeah.
And they don't get a computer upgrade despite the promises for it, at least not in this next episode.
Well, they were on their way to get a computer upgrade, and then they had to deal with whatever the heck is happening here.
A planet where there's open shirts for the men, and the women also kind of wear, sexy outfits, except they're tall.
Yeah. I mean, living my bisexual fantasy planet, but still, this is one of those weird ones. It's one of the only episodes that ever tries this, and for good reason, apparently. This is we've shown up to a planet where the women are in charge.
Wait, isn't that also Beta Z?
No one really goes into that much with Beta Z. They just sort of passively talk about it.
Yeah, well, there's maybe something to explore sometimes, Star Trek guys. Come on.
Yeah, we never really do much with Beta Z. It's just there.
Yeah, it gets invaded once, but that's about it.
Yeah, it's apparently a Federation member planet, but we don't know much about it beyond several characters come from there.
Mm-hmm. Fairly Earth-like, human-looking people with psychic powers. Yep. Also a tradition, apparently, of having giant headdresses, headpieces, hats, or something like that with animals in them, but they decided to discontinue that in the ancient past. The more you know.
I do enjoy how Star Trek used to not have to explain anything. It was just there.
Verisimilitude.
Now they have to try to explain why Picard has the wrong accent. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Things are complicated.
You're ruining everything.
Just deal with it, guys. Come on. Anyway, next time is something called Angel One.
Angel One, which is apparently the name of the planet, because, haha, it's ruled by women.
So,
most angels are not that.
Yeah,
for some
angels
reason.
are kind of androgynous, and we don't really got androgyny going on here.
Largely eye-covered abominations with wings and things,
Yes.
generally.
Do not be afraid, Gepwin. We're going to Angel One.
So yeah, this is a women-led society. Some men wind up on the planet, and they are threatening their very way of life.
Oh no! Whatever shall we do?
And then more men show up. Then Riker sleeps with some people.
Yeah, usual stuff.
Yeah, basically, it's fine.
Also, apparently they're pre-warp and have
Yeah.
disintegrators.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, but
Yeah.
this is still before Star Trek had to make any sense. Once we get to season 2, it has to make a little bit of sense, and then it keeps having to make more sense the further we go. But we're still in the none of this has to make any sense.
Well, someday we might have more Star Trek that makes little sense, but that's, lower decks. Anyway.
One of the greatest modern Star Trek shows. But anyway, next time we have sexy everyone. So at least there's that.
Oh, yes. The most alluring times.
Yeah, so you can enjoy that next week when we do Angel One.
Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow, Riker's chest hair. You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcast, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that you, that is now, no longer exists.